Have you ever been tricked into believing a lie so convincing it steals years of your life? Jerome Williams did, and he had no idea.
Jerome had kept a promise for 5 long years. Every month, like clockwork, he sent $300 to his late wife's mother, Diane, believing it was a sacred duty. Keisha, his wife, had passed away from cancer, and in her final days she had asked him to ensure her mother was cared for. Jerome didn't think twice. Honoring her wishes felt like the only way to keep her memory alive. Money was tight, between rent, bills, and raising his 8-year-old daughter, Zara, alone. Every dollar counted. Yet Jerome never missed a payment. Every month, he logged into his banking app, transferred the money, and went on with life. The act had become ritualistic, almost meditative, his way of staying connected to Keisha, even if only in memory. Yet over the years, something had nagged at him. Diane's thank yous were always polite but cold, almost mechanical. There were no warm conversations, no inquiries about his life, no genuine affection or gratitude. Jerome had pushed it aside, telling himself grief made people distant, that maybe Diane simply expressed emotions differently. One quiet evening, as Zara played with her dolls in the living room, Jerome scrolled through his banking app again. $300 had gone to Diane, as usual, but a subtle unease crept in, like a shadow on a sunny day. Something about the transaction felt off. "Daddy, can we get pizza tonight?" Zara's voice cut through his thoughts. Her small hands clutched her backpack as she bounced with excitement. Jerome smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Grilled cheese tonight, pumpkin. Maybe pizza next week." He kissed her forehead and watched her scamper off, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Later that night, Jerome's phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Need to discuss payment method? Call me tonight." Something in the phrasing unsettled him. Urgent, insistent. It was different from the usual, casual messages. For the first time in years, Jerome paused. Did he really know the woman he had trusted? Unable to sleep, he opened Keisha's old belongings stored in a corner of the attic. Photos, letters, and her wedding ring surrounded him. He thumbed through the stack and found a small, almost hidden business card from the funeral home. The handwriting didn't match the notes Diane had given him for the bank account. Jerome felt a sinking sensation in his stomach, a cold pit that spread with each thought. Could it be possible that Diane had lied all these years, that the money he had sacrificed so diligently for 5 years hadn't gone to a grieving mother at all? Questions multiplied. Why hadn't he noticed sooner? Why had Diane insisted on secrecy? Every memory of her words, every expression, every thank you he had received suddenly felt like part of an elaborate performance. Jerome realized that trust, once given freely, could be the very weapon someone used against him. Jerome was about to uncover a secret that would shatter everything he believed about love, duty, and trust. A secret that would change his life forever.
5 years of loyalty. Wasted? Jerome's doubts were about to become terrifyingly real. The next morning, Jerome couldn't shake the unease. Every face, every word from Diane replayed in his mind like a sinister film. He decided he needed help, someone who could look beyond his trust and see the truth. That's when his old friend, Troy, who worked at a local bank, stepped in. Troy arrived with a coffee in hand, his face clouded with concern. "Jerome, we need to talk," he said quietly, motioning him toward the couch. Jerome gestured for him to sit, a sinking feeling growing in his chest. "I looked into Diane's account activity," Troy began, tapping on his phone. "Jerome, it doesn't add up.
Large deposits come in right after your transfers and leave almost immediately. And the addresses connected to the account? None of them match any senior residence or legitimate mailing address. One's a short-term rental, the other a P.O. box. Jerome's stomach twisted. You mean she never lived where she said she did? Troy nodded solemnly. It looks like your money has been going somewhere else entirely. For the first time, Jerome felt the raw sting of betrayal. 5 years of sacrifice, of honoring a promise, might have funded someone else's deception. Someone clever, calculated, and careful enough to exploit his grief without leaving a trace. Determined to uncover the truth, Jerome drove to the first suspicious address, Riverside Apartments, Unit 214. The building was modern and well kept, nothing like the modest home he had pictured Diane in his mind. Jerome approached the manager, explaining that he needed to confirm a tenant's residence. The response hit him like a punch. Diane Jefferson doesn't live here, the manager said. Unit 214 is rented to Keisha Williams. She's been living here for years. Jerome felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath him. Keisha? Alive? The woman he had mourned, the wife he had buried in his heart, was alive and living a normal life while he had been sending her supposed widow's mother hundreds of dollars every month? His hands trembled as reality set in. He knew he needed professional help. That's when he contacted Marcus Reed, a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths. Marcus quickly got to work, tracing account records, insurance filings, and communications. The picture that emerged was staggering. Multiple accounts, multiple victims, and a sophisticated web of deceit. Keisha had faked her death, collected life insurance, and coordinated with Diane to exploit Jerome and others like him. Jerome felt a whirlwind of anger, grief, and disbelief. Every memory of the past 5 years, the letters, the phone calls, the tears shed in private, now carried the weight of manipulation. Someone had weaponized his grief, turned his love and loyalty into their personal profit. He sat in his living room, staring at a photo of Keisha and Zara. He had been robbed not just financially, but emotionally. The very person he had loved and trusted had vanished from truth, leaving only a carefully orchestrated illusion. When betrayal runs this deep, confrontation is inevitable. Jerome had been patient, but now the time had come. Jerome arrived at Lincoln Park just as the sun began to set, the orange glow casting long shadows across the benches and walking paths. He had arranged to meet Diane, and every step toward the small pavilion felt heavy. For 5 years he had trusted her. For 5 years he had honored promises made under the weight of grief, and now all of it had been a lie. Hidden in a nearby car, Marcus Reed monitored the scene with discreet cameras, ready to capture every word, every movement. Jerome's mind raced, replaying the evidence, account statements, rental records, insurance documents, and intercepted messages. He was armed not with anger alone, but with irrefutable proof. When Diane finally appeared, she looked nothing like the frail, grieving woman Jerome had imagined. She was sharp, poised, and unnervingly confident. Her eyes flicked to him, calculating and cold. Jerome took a deep breath, steadying himself before speaking. "I know what you've been doing," he said calmly, his voice low but firm. "Explain yourself." Diane's lips curved into a tight smile, an attempt to regain control. "Jerome, don't make this harder than it has to be. Keisha made choices. This isn't entirely my fault." Jerome's heart pounded. Not entirely your fault? He produced a folder, sliding it onto the bench between them. Inside were photographs, transaction records, and security footage. He had every transfer you received, every deposit you and Keisha coordinated, every victim, every lie. This ends now. For the first time, Diane's composure faltered. Jerome watched as her carefully constructed mask cracked. She tried to speak, to deflect blame, but the weight of evidence was undeniable. Her words faltered, replaced by desperate excuses and stammered denials. Diane finally admitted the truth. Keisha hadn't died. She had wanted out of their marriage, and she wanted financial gain. The death was a ruse, meticulously planned. Jerome had not been helping a grieving mother, he had been funding an elaborate scheme. Diane's part? Ensuring the deception appeared legitimate, helping transfer funds and keeping Jerome blind to the truth. Jerome listened in silence, fury simmering beneath a calm exterior. He wasn't just confronting a liar, he was confronting the woman who had turned his grief into a tool for personal gain. Marcus recorded everything, ensuring the confession couldn't be denied or disputed. For Jerome, this wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Every dollar he had sent, every tear shed in private, had a purpose now. It could protect others from falling prey to the same manipulation. His patience, long and painstaking, had brought him face to face with the truth. As Diane walked away, her arrogance gone, Jerome felt a strange sense of relief. The confrontation had stripped away the illusion, leaving only facts, evidence, and the bitter clarity of betrayal. He had survived the deception. Now it was time for the world to see it too. Jerome's patience had paid off, but even with the truth laid bare, one question lingered. Would justice be enough to heal 5 years of stolen grief?
Sometimes the hardest battles end with the sweetest victories. Jerome was about to reclaim his life. The courtroom was tense. Jerome sat quietly, clutching the folder of evidence that had changed everything. Diane and Keisha were on the opposite side, their faces betraying nerves and frustration for the first time. For years, Jerome had felt powerless, manipulated by grief and deception. Now he had a voice, and the truth had his name written all over it. Federal agents presented a staggering array of documents, bank statements, forged insurance claims, and a trail of multiple victims across state lines. Diane and Keisha's elaborate fraud network had not only targeted Jerome, but dozens of others, siphoning hundreds of thousands of dollars under the guise of grief and loss. Jerome's story, which once seemed like a private tragedy, became a key part of unraveling a criminal empire. When Jerome testified, he did so with measured emotion. He recounted the early days after Keisha's death, his devotion to honoring her final wish, the countless nights of worry and sacrifice, and the moment he discovered the truth. Each word carried the weight of 5 years of stolen grief. The court listened, captivated by a story that was equal parts heartbreaking and infuriating. Jerome was no longer a victim in silence, he was a symbol of resilience. Months later, the verdict came. Diane and Keisha were convicted on multiple charges, including fraud and conspiracy. Restitution was ordered. Jerome recovered the $18,000 he had unknowingly sent over the years, a small but meaningful reclamation of what had been taken from him. Justice had been served.
Life didn't magically return to normal, but Jerome approached it with a renewed sense of purpose. His home was renovated, Zara's school fees and future were secure. More importantly, Jerome no longer carried the false guilt of having failed someone who never existed in the way he believed. He had survived deception, heartbreak, and betrayal, and emerged stronger. He started small routines that reinforced normalcy: movie nights with Zara, weekend hikes, and quiet evenings sorting through memories of Keisha, now framed in truth rather than illusion. Jerome also began volunteering, helping other victims of scams and fraud. He turned his experience into a tool to protect others, ensuring that no one else would suffer as he had. The scars of betrayal remained, but they were no longer chains. They were reminders of endurance, patience, and the power of evidence. Jerome had honored his promise, faced unimaginable truths, and reclaimed control over his life. He had learned that grief can be manipulated, but courage and vigilance can expose even the most carefully hidden lies. Jerome's story isn't just a tale of betrayal, it's a reminder. Even in the darkest deception, truth has a way of coming to light. And with patience, courage, and unwavering resolve, healing and justice can always follow.
Like this story, subscribe, and comment below.